Death Becomes Her, quirky supernatural horror comedy directed by ZEMECKIS. Released in 1992, it explores a lifelong feud between two rivals that expands beyond the boundaries of life and death. Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep play Helen and Madeline, two aging women who have spent their lives competing against one another, particularly over the affections of Ernest, a complete and utter doofus played by Bruce Willis. And after Madeline and Helen drinks a magic potion that rejuvenates them and makes them young and immortal, it's game on, as the two start brutally attacking each other to the point where they become walking undead zombies in this hilarious movie that boasts some great special effects and acting performances. Death Becomes Her explores the fascination of forever wanting to look youthful and beautiful at any cost. I guess you could say it's the ultimate movie about going through a midlife crisis. So today we are going to look into 10 things that you didn't know about Death Becomes Her. So let's drink the magic potion and check it out.
Look at me, Ernest. Just look at me. I'm soaking wet.
And there seems to be something wrong with your,
Oh, I have a hole in my stomach. I have a hole in my stomach.
Number 10. Its special effects technology led to the special effects in Jurassic Park. Industrial Light and Magic provided the special effects for Death Becomes Her, which were honestly pretty groundbreaking for the time, as we see characters with holes in their stomachs and twisted necks. The effects used were revolutionary in that the computer digital enhancements made for Death Becomes Her, namely computer-generated skin texture, would go on to pave the way for Jurassic Park in terms of digital effects. Jurassic Park came out a year later and was Industrial Light and Magic's next big movie, and if it wasn't for Death Becomes Her pushing new boundaries of digital effects, then we wouldn't have got the awesome effects in Spielberg's dinosaur classic. In other words, we have Death Becomes Her to thank for the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. Number 9. On-set mishap. Both Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep are pretty funny in their roles, and they totally make it work, as the movie's main focus is the rivalry between these two. You can really feel that these guys are so jealous of one another, they totally want to rip each other apart, while oddly still having a fondness for each other. Well, maybe Meryl Streep got a bit too involved in her role, as in the scene where their characters are having a shovel fight, Goldie Hawn actually got hit in the face with a shovel, with it scraping her cheek and even leaving a small scar. Well, good on her for soldiering on and completing the movie despite her injury. Number 8. Ernest nearly had a different face. In Death Becomes Her, Bruce Willis stepped aside from his usual action tough guy roles to play plastic surgeon turned alcoholic Ernest, the dim-witted guy caught in the middle of the gruesome feud between his wife and ex-fiancée. Willis is pretty funny in the movie, and I can't help but feel like he's channeling Rick Moranis as Louis Tully from Ghostbusters. In fact, the first time I saw the movie, I didn't even know that this was Bruce Willis. However, he wasn't the original choice to play Ernest. That was in fact Kevin Kline, who declined, where the fish called Wonder Star appeared in the movie Dave instead. Bruce Willis would also go on to give some insights into the movie's production, as he claims that titles suggested for the film were It's Death Baby and My Man Death. Wow! Both those titles are terrible! Yeah, Death Becomes Her was definitely the better name. Number 7. The Woes of Meryl Streep. Despite the fact that Meryl Streep once said in an interview that she accepted the role because she felt it was too original to pass up, it seems that she didn't really enjoy making Death Becomes Her. So much so she vowed never to make a special effects movie again. I guess you could say her troubles started right from the get-go, as she thought she was playing the Helen character, as she didn't see herself as the singing and dancing starlet type, and couldn't understand why she would be cast in the role. But despite this misunderstanding, she still went through with filming. However, the technical special effects is what really ruined the experience for her. something she would go on to call tedious, as she felt like her involvement was taking a back seat to all the complicated special effects, with her standing around like a piece of machinery. She basically felt it was more about the effects than her acting, and likened the situation to going to the dentist. Number 6, Death Becomes Her is sandwiched in between two ZEMECKIS mega hits. As mentioned, Death Becomes Her was directed by legendary director Robert Zemeckis, who is best known for directing the Back to the Future movies, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and more recently, The Walk. What's interesting about Death Becomes Her is it's sandwiched in between two massive movies he made, which kind of overshadows Death Becomes Her. One is Back to the Future Part 3, which came out in 1990, and the other is Forrest Gump, which came out in 1994. So yeah, in between finishing the Back to the Future trilogy and Forrest Gump, Zemeckis made a horror comedy about the terrors of middle age. But despite the fact that Back to the Future Part 3 and Forrest Gump were massively successful and popular hits, Death Becomes Her has still managed to become a cult classic, with many fans who love and celebrate the movie. Also, there is a connection to Back to the Future in Death Becomes Her, in that the Helen character explains that she drank the potion of eternal youth on October the 26th, 1985.
When did you take it anyway? October 26, 1985, way before you.
The exact same day the events of Back to the Future take place. So, if Robert Zemeckis' films have a shared universe, Zemeckisverse, then the night that Marty McFly went to 1955 was the same night that Helen drank from the potion.
It's another miracle!
Speaking of things that happened on the same day. Number 5, it came out the same day as another supernatural comedy. Thanks to Beetlejuice, in the late 80s and early 90s, horror comedies were a popular genre in the world of cinema, and Death Becomes Her definitely has a Beetlejuice/Witches of Eastwick vibe about it. However, Death Becomes Her came out the same day as another supernatural horror comedy, that being the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, starring Kristy Swanson and Luke Perry, in which a high school cheerleader is the chosen one to defeat evil vampires. Death Becomes Her definitely beat Buffy the Vampire Slayer, as it made $149 million in the box office, to Buffy's mere $16.6 million. Neither film got rave reviews though, but I guess that when it came time to watching horror movie comedies at your local cinema in July 1992, people were lining up to see Death Becomes Her over Buffy the Vampire Slayer, despite the fact that Buffy would go on to become a massive franchise. Number 4, DVD controversy. The Death Becomes Her DVD release is the stuff of legends, but for all the wrong reasons, as it's notoriously known for being awful. Upon its DVD release, many fans were appalled with the movie's DVD quality, with complaints ranging from blurriness to graininess and weak colour display, with the quality of the DVD being labelled as sloppy and horrible. Some fans and online group discussions even theorised that the Death Becomes Her DVD was just a Laserdisc version put on the DVD format, hence a breakdown in picture. Death Becomes Her has since had further DVD and Blu-ray releases, to which the picture has been corrected. But still, I just want to get an original release DVD copy of Death Becomes Her, if anything just out of sheer curiosity to see how awful the picture really is. Number 3, it beat Batman and Aliens at the Oscars. Despite the fact that Death Becomes Her had its critics, with main complaints being that although the movie had great special effects and looked good, along with great performances from Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep, it was generally a hollow experience. I don't know what critics expected. I mean, it was just a mere horror comedy. I mean, it's not exactly as complex as 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it's not claiming to be. But regardless, not only did Death Become Her still manage to win an Oscar, but it also beat two huge powerhouse franchises, those being Batman and Aliens, as Death Becomes Her won for Best Visual Effects, beating Batman Returns and Alien 3. Creating a great victory for Robert Zemeckis and all others involved in Death Becomes Her. Let's face it, beating Batman is one hell of an achievement. Number 2, it was going to be a Tales from the Crypt movie. From 1989 to 1996, the director of Death Becomes Her, Robert Zemeckis, produced the horror anthology TV series Tales from the Crypt, which was a hugely popular TV show and introduced the Crypt Keeper onto the small screen. And Death Becomes Her was originally set to be a Tales from the Crypt themed movie, until it was decided it should be its own film. The trailer for Death Becomes Her even features the Tales from the Crypt theme, which was composed by Danny Elfman, suggesting that the idea to detach Death Becomes Her from Tales from the Crypt happened later in its production. Other movies that were going to be Tales from the Crypt movies before cutting ties to the show include The Frighteners and From Dusk Till Dawn, and Tales from the Crypt would actually go on to get tie-in movies with Demon Knight, Bordello of Blood, and Ritual. Number 1. Original Ending. After the movie's test audience screening, drastic cuts and changes had to be made to the movie. The ending to Death Becomes Her had to be changed and refilmed on the account that the audience hated the original ending. We all know the classic Death Becomes Her ending, with Madeline and Helen attending Ernest's funeral in 2029, where they fall down some stairs completely breaking and falling apart. Well, that wasn't the original ending. The original ending saw Ernest fake his own death to escape the clutches of Helen, Madeline, and Liesl, where he marries a bartender played by British actress Tracy Ullman, where Madeline and Helen discover Ernest and the bartender many years later, living life as an elderly couple. But it was felt that this ending was just too happy, and that the movie needed a dark ending. So the entire end sequence was cut along with Ullman's bartender character. But still, at least we got the hilarious and memorable ending as seen in the final cut, which always stood out to me, as it was so damn horrific but also so damn funny at the same time.
Do you remember where you parked the car?
Be careful what you wish for. That is what I take away from Death Becomes Her. That it's better to grow old gracefully and focus on a happy life rather than focusing on things like appearances and trying to be better than those that you don't like. Just enjoy life. But above all stages of life. Anyway, I'm Minty, and Death Becomes Her actually really creeped me out as a kid. See ya!